every rock that you pick up, you are the first human ever to pick up that rock. You're the first one to turn it around, to look under the rock, and you just never know what you're going to find. Five cargo missions, 2 life support units, 2 living units and another supply unit. And finally in 2022, the humans will leave Earth, arriving on Mars April 2023.
Ich bin verheiratet, habe 3 Kinder. Ich denke, sie werden verstehen, dass ich für mich auch meine Träume und meine Ziele erfüllen will und muss, auch wenn das sehr egoistisch klingt. Das Öffnen der Luke und der erste Schritt auf den Mars. Ich denke, das wird der emotionalste und intensivste Augenblick werden.
I've always wanted to go to space.
If you can make 1 billion per week just by having a large audience in the entire world, then suddenly 6 billion doesn't sound like so much money anymore.
There is nothing that would make me want to pass up this opportunity.
We have received more than 10,000 emails from all over the world. They know that it's going to be a mission of permanent settlement, a one-way mission.
L'accomplissement même d'être parmi les 4 premiers à mettre le premier pas sur Mars, laisser un nom dans l'histoire.
Lá eu vou ouvir coisas, perceber coisas que aqui eu não percebo. Então, aos poucos, Marte vai se transformar também numa nova casa. Então, vou me sentir confortável lá também, eu acredito.
Il ne faut pas se voiler la face, donnant à l'humanité l'opportunité d'avoir une seconde chance.
Der Mensch ist dafür geboren, ins All zu gehen. Der Mensch ist dafür geboren, zu entdecken. Wir können nicht anders, wir müssen das tun.
In 2023, 4 astronauts will land on Mars to settle a colony. 2 years later, 4 more will follow. In the years after that, at least 40 astronauts will be living on Mars. None of them will ever return to Earth. Eventually, they will die there, some 33 million miles from home. The concept sounds bizarre. Scientists are divided about the feasibility, but some are clear about their desire.
Oh, absolutely, yes. I mean, if I was given the opportunity of going to Mars, I would go. I wouldn't hesitate for a second. And the opportunity to see an entirely different planet from the Earth would be just amazing. It would be the absolutely most amazing thing that one could consider doing. It would be incredible.
What would be the consequences of such an operation, legally, for example?
We don't quite yet have the understanding to work out what law would apply, for example, on Mars itself. And we need to try to work that out. What law would apply and what laws would apply between these people. The technology moves very quickly. The problem is the law doesn't keep up. The law is always struggling behind. And sometimes you have to sit back and think, well, what are the legal issues here and how do we regulate it? And that becomes an interesting challenge, and therefore that's something that I'm very interested in.
Mars One has many followers, aspiring astronauts who claim to be willing to give up everything on Earth for the ultimate adventure.
Humans going to Mars, and not just visiting, but establishing a settlement on Mars it's huge. It's mind-bogglingly huge.
Klassiker auf dem Weg zum Mars ist die Schwerelosigkeit. Da freue ich mich riesig drauf, wie ein kleines Kind vor Weihnachten. Ja? Genial. Dann, was ist, wenn ich am Mars ankomme? Was für Farben strömen auf mich ein? Wie sieht der Himmel aus? Wie sieht der Himmel nachts aus auf dem Mars? Welche Fossilien finden wir vielleicht, wenn wir anfangen zu graben auf dem Mars? Ja? Vielleicht finden wir da versteinerte Lebensformen und können damit beweisen, Mensch, es gibt doch Leben auf anderen Planeten. Das wäre eine elementare Entdeckung, die wir machen können. Da. Das ist ja das Spannende.
On nous a dit aussi aller sur la Lune, c'était impossible. Je pense que les sceptiques vont être convaincus en voyant les premiers vaisseaux être construits en orbite, en voyant les premiers satellites envoyés sur Mars pour maintenir la liaison satellite, Internet et tout. Parce qu'on a maîtrisé la Terre, on a maîtrisé l'air, on a maîtrisé l'eau, il nous reste à maîtriser l'espace.
Eu acho que desde muito nova, acho que eu sempre me interessei por isso, posso dizer assim, desde que eu comecei a estudar sobre ciência, naquele livro de escola em que a gente vê a fotinha do planeta Terra visto do espaço e começa a ouvir histórias sobre pessoas que foram para o espaço. Eu comecei a me interessar por isso desde aí, né? Então a curiosidade veio só crescendo aos poucos, né? A vontade de ver pessoalmente, não só por fotos ou por outros meios, né?
It's January 31st, 2013. Bas Lansdorp, the founder of Mars One, writes this email. Mars One would like to receive feedback from those of you who are considering to apply. We are most interested to hear why you would like to go to Mars. He adds all the visitors from the Mars One website and hits the send button. Then it all starts. Mail starts streaming in.
And we started getting replies, and in the beginning we got more than 5-6 emails per minute.
Many people claim to have a deeply rooted desire to go to Mars. Many say they want to help mankind move on.
From the US, from Russia, from Brazil, from Iran, from Egypt, from Japan, from China, literally from all over the world. Well, we even get applications from Syria. That's of course bizarre with the situation that's going on in the country, but even there people have heard about this plan and find it so motivating that they sent us an email to tell us that they want to go to Mars.
Within weeks, the counter passes 10,000. 10,000 people that seem to be determined to give up everything on Earth to go to Mars and eventually die there, 33 million miles from home. Together with a group of co-founders, Lansdorp travels through America to select equipment for the mission. The leading companies in the commercial space industry are based in California and Arizona. The budget for the mission is estimated at $6 billion.
After we start the astronaut selection procedure, amounts of applicants will convince quite a few broadcasters to contact us about broadcasting the selection procedure in 2014. And we're hoping that between 10 and 20 broadcasters will pick it up initially. That would really be a good success.
After that, they will air more frequently as the launch date approaches. As far as Mars 1 is concerned, this has to be the biggest media spectacle ever. Lansdorp is in the US to speak with his suppliers. Which rocket, which suits, what kind of habitat, and so on. He is shopping for a mission, which, if it is executed, will turn the world upside down. Journalists call him around the clock.
Actually, I wanted to go myself when I came up with this idea. And the only reason that I'm not going is that I don't have exactly the right personality. You need a very calm person, a very patient person, and I am more the enthusiastic entrepreneur who's not patient at all. That's why I get things done.
Bas Lansdorp, 35, has a background in mechanical engineering. He is extremely motivated, and he's prepared to make big sacrifices. As far as he's concerned, he has to succeed.
For thousands of years, people have looked at the sky and they've seen Mars in the sky. It has been a god, it has been an omen for good fortune or bad fortune. And we at this moment live in a time where we can actually go to this place. And we are already there with rovers, but we can actually go there now. Humans can go there and explore the place that has been in the imagination of humans for more than 1,000 years. That's to me really inspiring.
NASA also examines the possibility of a mission to Mars with one key difference. In their concept, astronauts are expected to return safely back to Earth. To ensure this, a second rocket needs to be constructed and launched from Mars itself for the return trip. This is technically almost impossible and extremely costly.
The reason that we've not gone to Mars yet is that space agencies are unwilling to do this in a one-way mission, so in a permanent settlement mission. And if you don't accept that humans will stay on Mars, then at the moment it's simply impossible with existing technology.
So Lansdorp has omitted this component from his plan. In his concept, the astronauts won't return after landing, but stay on Mars to begin a human settlement. The technology for this already exists. Lansdorp's plan is easier to execute, but much more controversial. Stephan Günther is 44. He's from a town close to Berlin. Stephan is a pilot and develops software for the aerospace industry. He works in Berlin, Benidorm, and Florida. He has always dreamt of being an astronaut.
Also es ist bei mir sehr tief verankert, es geht sehr weit zurück. Solange ich mich erinnern kann, oder soweit ich mich zurückerinnern kann, will ich Astronaut werden und will ins All fliegen. Also für mich ist klar, in diesem Leben fliege ich irgendwann ins All. Ja, und alles, was ich bis jetzt gemacht habe, habe ich versucht, in diese Richtung auch zu lenken. Es ist der Drang nach Neuem, nach neuen Erkenntnissen, nach dem, was man vorher noch nie erlebt hat. Das ist das, was uns alle auch vorantreibt, ist diese Neugier. Wir wollen neue Dinge erfahren, wir wollen neue Dinge erleben und es ist einfach dieser Drang, der in einem ist.
Stephan has a wife and 3 children.
Ich würde mir selbst untreu werden, wenn ich jetzt mich nicht beworben hätte oder wenn ich mich nicht bewerben würde. Und man muss ja auch einen Vorteil da drin sehen. Wir haben 10 Jahre Zeit, uns darauf vorzubereiten, dass wir nicht mehr irgendwann zusammen sein werden. Wer hat das heutzutage? Ja? Wie oft passiert es, dass morgens der Mann oder die Frau aus dem Haus geht, einen Autounfall hat und nie mehr zurückkommt? Man hatte überhaupt keine Zeit, sich zu verabschieden. So negativ, wie das jetzt klingt, aber so positiv ist es in Sicht auf Mars One. Wir haben 10 Jahre Zeit, uns auf die Mission vorzubereiten und zu sagen, okay, dann bin ich nicht mehr da. Da steckt eine Menge an positiven Dingen drin, an positiven Erfahrungen und Entwicklungen, die man selbst vollziehen kann in diesen 10 Jahren. Ich denke, sie werden es letztendlich doch verstehen, weil ich versuche, meine Kinder auch so zu erziehen, dass sie wissen, dass es darauf ankommt, dass sie ihre Träume leben, dass sie die Dinge erfüllen, die für sie wichtig sind. Ich denke, sie werden verstehen, dass ich für mich auch meine Träume und meine Ziele erfüllen will und muss, auch wenn das sehr egoistisch klingt. Aber nur wenn ich mich selbst, wenn ich meine Ziele und meine Träume lebe und mich glücklich und dabei glücklich bin, kann ich mich auch fair und gerecht zu anderen Menschen hin verhalten. Ja, es ist aber unausweichlich. Tod ist im Leben auch unausweichlich und so ist das für mich auch unausweichlich, weil es ist mein Traum und es ist mein Ziel, mein Lebensziel. Das klingt jetzt wieder mein, das ist ziemlich egoistisch, ja, aber so muss jeder für sich auch seine Ziele finden, auch meine Kinder, meine Familie und müssen damit lernen zu leben. Und wie gesagt, ich sehe eine Chance da drin, dass wir jetzt schon wissen, dass es dann stattfindet. Ich sehe es als Gewinn, nicht als Verlust. Ja, wir haben einfach die Möglichkeit, 10 Jahre lang dieses langsame Sterben intensiv zu genießen, wenn man es genießen nennen kann. Aber ich denke, man kann es auch so nennen. Ja.
Beatriz is 21. She lives in Rio de Janeiro and she is studying anthropology. Already she is prepared to adapt her life to her future on Mars.
Estiver pronta para ir e me disserem que eu vou a Marte, eu vou evitar ao máximo fazer qualquer coisa que me prenda aqui, né? Porque minha mente vai estar toda trabalhada para ir a Marte. Então, acho que eu não vou ter mais espaço para pensar em outras coisas que me prendam aqui. Eu não acredito que eu vá ter nenhum tipo de envolvimento que me prenda na Terra. É uma coisa que eu não penso, assim.
Her parents want to support their daughter, but her mother is devastated by the idea.
Não feliz, não me sinto feliz, porque ela é minha única filha, né? Então eu não gostaria de perdê-la.
O que eu vou dizer lá vai ser uma surpresa e eu só vou dizer lá, né? Não tem como imaginar, não.
A última coisa, nunca esquecer que eu a amo, né? Eu vou amar sempre, para sempre. Ela é a coisa mais importante na minha vida. Foi e vai ser sempre. Entendeu? Hoje vão me fazer chorar.
Também.
Henri is 32. He is originally Congolese, but lives in Brussels. Henri has 2 children, a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old. They are so young that he hasn't told them about his plans.
Que quand tu as un projet de vie que tu vas accomplir, que ce soit pour le bien de l'humanité ou pour ton propre bien, et pas sacrifier. C'est donner une richesse que j'aurais jamais pu avoir l'opportunité de donner si j'avais pas eu cette opportunité. C'est vraiment donner, laisser un nom, laisser dans l'histoire des traces, accomplir quelque chose que tout le monde va être content et imaginer l'exploit même pour un humain d'arriver sur une autre planète.
Many astronauts make the comparison to explorers from ancient times. Back then, they argue, uncertainty also played a key role in the mission. Henri visits the Euro Space Center in the south of Belgium.
Je fais partie d'un projet qui est vraiment à la hauteur scientifique inimaginable. On ne peut qu'être scientifique pour participer à ces projets. Oui, je me ressens en tant qu'informaticien scientifique, j'ai fait des cours scientifiques. nous arriverons à faire ces beaux projets qui est quitter la Terre, arriver et coloniser Mars. Il faudrait que la technologie nous aide pour cela et il faut les moyens pour cela. C'est tout ce qui nous manque. La volonté y est.
Sara, director, is 24. She is from Philadelphia.
Being an astronaut was actually the first thing I ever wanted to be when I was like 4. And there have been all these times in my life where it sort of looked not possible. I mean, it's really hard to be an astronaut just because there are so few of them. But so it sort of became one of those things that's always been in the back of my mind where if I ever had the chance to be an astronaut, I would drop everything and do it. The chance never came up until now. And now, you know, maybe there is a chance. Maybe there isn't, but I have to try.
Sara has 2 passions, art and science. She has a degree in biology. The one who pointed out the project to her was her father.
We've always encouraged Sara to make choices, to think about, you know, why and how. You know, so maybe it's not going to happen in 10 years. Everything gets delayed. You know, 10 years is a very aggressive time frame to do it in. But if it happens in 15 years, if it takes 20 years, it's still, in my eyes, it's a great idea, and it's the right way to approach it. Instead of making a job, you know, unnecessarily difficult, in this case, the traditional approach of send somebody out, bring them back, you know, let's think of something that's a little different, outside the usual constraints.
My mom has a friend who she works with. She's been telling everyone about my hopes to go to Mars someday. And so this friend of hers who, he collects shards of meteorites. And he had one that presumably fell from Mars. I guess they analyzed the chemical composition. I'm not totally sure how they deal with recovered meteorites. But he had one from Mars and he gave it to me. So the joke is that someday, if I ever end up going to Mars, I will bring it with me and sort of return it to its home, this little tiny shard. So that would be one thing I'd bring. And other than that, probably I definitely have to bring a scrapbook. My favorite photos of the people I'd be saying goodbye and saying goodbye to. Other than that, I really can't think of much. You know, maybe some childhood mementos or something, but I feel like the difference between living here and living in a habitat on Mars is so enormous, and you can't really disguise that difference by bringing stuff. So I don't think any amount of stuff from Earth could make Mars feel like home, you know, like as though it was your home. The point is you need to make it your home, your new home. So I probably wouldn't bring a whole lot with me, I don't think.
If you would have had the chance if you were 18 now, you would just...
No question in my mind. I'd be first in line.
Mars and the Earth orbit the Sun at different speeds, illustrated in this schematic chart. The journey to Mars can only be made once every 26 months, when the Earth and Mars are closest together, the so-called launch window. At that moment, the distance will be around 56 million kilometers, or a bit more than 33 million miles. After that, it will be another 26 months before the next opportunity to travel from Earth to Mars. Lansdorp and his team are visiting Paragon. Paragon manufactures spacesuits and life support systems for crew capsules. Confronted with the approach of Mars One, they will have to develop a new suit adapted to the Martian environment.
For this mission in particular, because it's a one-way trip and they're going to go down and they're going to stay and build upon the initial missions, you have to design a suit system that's very robust and reliable, a suit that can be maintained in the field by the people using it. And that's very different than suit systems to date. The suits that people are aware of when you see the astronauts at the International Space Station, they're very much resupplied and refurbished because it's so close to the Earth. They're able to resupply and refurbish, bring them back down for refurbishment. When the shuttle was still flying, they could do that. So these suits are very different. They're going to go one-way trip just like the astronauts, and they have to be able to be maintained by those folks.
This means the suits need to be designed in such a way that the astronauts can maintain them on their own.
So the challenges there are, it starts with the design of the suit and the major components and subsystems that go into it. You have to design for commonality amongst parts. It sounds trivial, but if you use 10 different types of fasteners to hold things together, that's then a set of 10 different spare parts you got to effect repairs. And instead, if you can get by, say, one fastener type, you reduce your parts count. So it's a pronounced challenge that anyone needs to recognize to take on.
The concept is that the astronauts will grow their own food to become self-sustainable. This has been done before, here at Biosphere 2 in Arizona. This is the largest enclosed ecosystem in the world, like a large greenhouse. Not for profit, but for research purposes. 13 square kilometers of desert, ocean, mangroves, a savanna, and even a jungle. Tabor McCallum is one of the founders. Together with 7 other scientists, he has spent 2 years in complete isolation inside the Biosphere 2.
Living with a small crew in an isolated environment isn't something that I think we're naturally wired to do, at least not in Western cultures. Some Eastern cultures, I think, are more apt at that. So it's something that the crew has to learn how to do. It's a personal issue. It's your own personal psychology and demons that find their way to the surface over time. It's sort of like a monastic experience. You know, people go into monasteries.
The goal? To find out if people can survive in an enclosed ecosystem on another planet.
Well, you need a very redundant, very reliable life support system because going to Mars, there's no turning back. And so reliability is probably one of the major issues that hasn't really yet been fully demonstrated. Many aspects of going to Mars have been demonstrated, like the navigation and the spacecraft, but the life support system is still something we have to work on.
So this is all basically new technology?
The technologies aren't new, they just haven't been made reliable and for the kinds of durations we're talking about. Keeping somebody alive for the rest of their life is a real challenge. Well, the air eventually will be from plants, just like on Earth. In the beginning, we'll use physical chemical methods to regenerate the air, ones that are easy to send to Mars while we blow out the rest of the colony. This could grow and take up excess CO2 or give up CO2. Growing food on Mars, for example, means you need energy, but you also need the pressurized volume to grow the food in. So you want plants that are very efficient at using the energy, but you also want plants that can produce a lot of food for a very small volume, because making those pressurized environments is in itself very difficult to do. It took us, for example, 4 months to make a pizza. We had goats in the biosphere, so they gave us milk. We would plant the wheat and grow the wheat and harvest the wheat and turn that into dough and then put cheese on the pizza, but it took a long time to make it. The first Martian pizza is going to be cool.
Do you think it's going to be a pepperoni?
Well, getting the pork for pepperoni may take a while, but a nice cheese pizza with mushrooms is probably going to be the first one.
Independent, intelligent, a team player who is employable anywhere, mentally strong and works well in isolation. Those are the most important qualifications for which the aspiring astronauts will be selected. Norbert Kraft is the physician responsible for rolling out the medical program for Mars 1. Altogether, the training will take 8 years. The key part of the training is the practical part, where astronauts are locked up in a closed environment for several months in a row.
After they are selected, we will put them into habitats which are close as possible simulate the Mars habitats, and that they have to experience by themselves, then they really know if they can endure it or not, because if you don't experience by yourself, how do you know? You can say yes ahead of time, I can, and then you are inside and you say, no, I can't anymore.
4 candidates will be selected for the first tour to Mars. The success of the entire project will depend on these 4 individuals. That is why Kraft needs to know everything about them.
We have to train them and observe them for at least 5 to 10 years, really to work with them and see who are the best ones.
To survive on their own, the astronauts will have to learn quite a few new skills according to Mars 1. Physical and electrical repairs to the settlement structures, cultivating crops in confined spaces, and addressing both routine and serious medical issues such as dental upkeep, muscle tears, and bone fractures. The soil on the island of Lanzarote off the coast of Africa is in many regards similar to that on Mars. Professor Ian Crawford and Professor Hilary Downs, both planetary scientists, are here on a field trip with their students to study the soil. A mission to Mars has many risks. If threats like radiation, weightlessness, and toxic dust can be overcome, the scientists believe it can succeed. But are the risks the astronauts are taking acceptable?
There is radiation, there is a possibility of inhaling chemical dust. We would consider those risks and we would find a way to reduce the risk as much as possible. But you know, you cannot reduce risk completely.
One of the biggest risks on Mars are the so-called solar flares. From time to time, the sun ejects massive doses of radiation in the form of gigantic flares. Because of the thin atmosphere surrounding Mars, humans would not be able to survive this radiation, unless there is sufficient protection. Professor Ian Crawford says that lava tubes can offer this protection. Pictures taken on Mars show that there are many lava tubes.
We're in the Monte Corona lava tube on Lanzarote. And this is one of the world's largest preserved lava tubes. Lava tubes formed by lava flowing downhill from a volcano behind us. And then the lava flow has cooled at its surface and developed a sort of crust. And then the lava's continued flowing under this crust. And gradually the crust has got thicker and other lava flows have gone on top. And then the lava inside has drained away, leaving this long lava tube. It's essentially a long cave underground. Lava tubes are potentially very valuable for astronauts because they protect the astronauts inside would be protected from the surface environment, and in particular, they'd be protected from solar and cosmic rays and from radiation from the sun, solar flare events. Cosmic rays and solar flares only penetrate a metre or so of solid rock. So down here in a lava tube, where we've got several metres of solid rock above us, we would be protected from the radiation environment outside. Also, the thermal environment is much more stable. So instead of having big extremes of temperature between day and night, down in a lava tube, the temperature will be constant, and that's also easier from an engineering point of view because you don't have to worry about materials expanding and contracting every day as the temperature changes. Setting up a habitat in a lava tube would offer protection against those external hazards. But in addition to all of that, certainly on Mars, if the aim is to search for life on Mars, then we already know the surface of Mars is very hostile to life. But we know these lava tubes exist, and inside a lava tube, their conditions are much less extreme. So for exactly the same reason that humans might want to establish a base in a lava tube, any life on Mars, near the surface of Mars, may have migrated into lava tubes to seek protection from the external environment. So in the context, not only would lava tubes be great places to set up a base or a colony, they'd also be very important places to explore scientifically. If you're looking for evidence of life on Mars, then lava tubes are a better prospect than the red dusty soil that we see at the surface.
You know, if I can be someone who is really into the science part, but also is good at the more human aspects that people will need to, you know, not go crazy on Mars. Maybe I'll make the first cave paintings in our habitat on Mars.
Ihr Sohn wird 18 sein, als Sie gehen, oder?
Mhm.
Und als Ihr Sohn sagt, zum Beispiel 1 Jahr von jetzt oder 3 Jahre von jetzt, bitte, 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 Papi, bleibe hier. Was machen Sie dann?
Die gut aussehende Antwort wäre, ja, ich würde alles hinschmeißen. Die ehrliche Antwort wäre, ich würde trotzdem an meinem Traum festhalten, so hart wie es ist.
But what if he regrets this later, alone on Mars?
Dann muss ich mit leben. Dann muss ich das verarbeiten. Aber ich denke, man kann dem nicht ausweichen. Man wird immer irgendwas bedauern und auch es wird genug geben, wo ich hinterher sage, es war doof, dass ich mich so entschieden habe, ja, oder dass ich das gemacht habe. Aber das ist überall im Leben so, das ist mit vielen Dingen im Leben so. Ja. Nicht nur speziell jetzt Richtung Mars One. Muss ich mit leben.
Ja. Glauben Sie in einen Gott oder so etwas? Oder was für einen Platz hat das für ihn?
Ich glaube, dass es auf jeden Fall irgendeine schöpferische Kraft im Universum gibt, die Dinge mit Plan kreiert hat. Weil wenn man sich umschaut, sieht man, dass alles ineinander greift und alles perfekt ist, bis der Mensch eingreift. Ich glaube jetzt nicht an einen Gott in Form der Person, wie die Kirchen sie versucht darzustellen. Aber ich glaube, dass da mehr ist, als wir sehen und begreifen im Moment. Mhm. Ich denke, da ist viel, viel mehr. Mhm. Ja, aber nicht im Sinne der klassischen Religion. Ich meine, wenn man zurückschaut, auch bei den Apollo-Missionen, wenn man die Astronauten befragt, kamen oft diese Aussagen, dass sie einfach spirituell einen Riesenschritt gemacht haben oder plötzlich eine ganz andere Perspektive hatten von dem Leben auf der Erde oder vom Leben an sich und von unserem kleinen blauen Planeten. Wie zerbrechlich doch eigentlich alles ist. Und wie man das eigentlich schätzen sollte und genießen sollte, was man jetzt hat. Ja, was man auf der Erde hat, genau. Diese dünne Atmosphäre, die wirklich sehr dünn ist. Dass man damit einfach auch anders umgeht oder mit dem Planeten anders umgeht. Aber das ist was, denke ich, was einfach grundlegend passieren wird, dass man, und ich hoffe, dass auch einen spirituellen Kick bekommt im positiven, im bewusstseinserweiterten Bereich, ganz klar.
Even though Crawford and Downs think that a time frame of 10 years is too optimistic, they believe in the principles of projects like Mars One. Governments face too many moral and political limitations.
When the Americans sent the Apollo astronauts to the moon in the late 1960s and early 1970s, when that project when it ceased, when the funding was pulled from the Apollo project, I don't think anybody at that time thought that no other person would ever walk on the moon for the next 40 years. And so far, no person has been back to the moon. And that's what happens. You're at the mercy of budget cuts, you're at the mercy of a new government coming in and saying, oh, well, it's much more important to do something else. And so it's a private company with one or two driven individuals who are determined to do this. That actually might work far better than a government-funded agency.
But the consequences are almost incalculable. Mars One has chosen for a one-way mission for technical and business reasons. That the astronauts will live on Mars is a collateral result of this. But this is what changes the perspective entirely. Imagine that the plan is actually executed, maybe in 20 years instead of 10. A new community will be created on Mars. What are the ethical considerations of this? What are the legal considerations? What law is applicable in space? Stephan Freeland from the University of Western Sydney is a specialist in space law.
If this goes ahead, we're looking at the beginnings of what you might think of as a colonisation of a part of outer space. Now, obviously in a very small way, and obviously a long way away, but one of the fundamental principles of space is, and this is really important because even when the United States and the Soviet Union were at the height of the Cold War, when the space race began, and they were certainly looking at each other as belligerents, they both recognized almost straight away that neither of them could own space. Neither of them could colonize space. And indeed, the treaties make that clear. And the reason we have that idea that nobody can colonize space is that it's a protection for us. It's a safety valve to ensure that we don't start having wars about resources in space. So, fundamental rule, space in a sense belongs to everybody. No one country, no individuals can appropriate it for themselves. Okay. Now we're talking about settlements in space. We're talking about people taking a part of land, if that's the right expression. We're talking about people living off that land, so exploiting, let's say, if there are any water resources or whatever. We're beginning to talk about notions of colonisation. I understand in a very small way at the beginning. But this sort of experiment is a precursor for other sorts of things, no doubt. If this works, then others would be looking at doing things maybe on the moon, maybe in other parts of outer space. We need to try to work out what law applies to these people. What are the legal rules? What is their legal status? At the moment, under the legal framework, we can work out what law applies while they're in the vehicle. That will depend on which country has registered the vehicle. So we know, let's say the vehicle is registered by the United States. There's a UN system of registration. Then, by and large, US law would apply whilst they're in the space vehicle, on their way to Mars. But the registration system doesn't yet provide for what law is to apply once they reach Mars. At some point, it's important for us to work out, well, maybe we need to create new laws to deal with that specifically, because the local circumstances on Mars may mean that you need different type of law. It's a really complex issue, it's philosophical. If you're creating a legal system for a new sort of environment, you have the opportunity, but also the responsibility to work out what makes sense. How do we allow this to develop?
Eu, principalmente por estudar ciências sociais, acho que a gente pode aprender mais sobre a construção da sociedade, né? E poder acompanhar o crescimento de uma sociedade desde o início até o final da minha vida, né? Poder acompanhar aquilo em todos os momentos, né? Essa também é uma parte interessante da missão.
You know, all of the things that we just have to do all the time. Or, you know, even complaining about the government, you know, as everyone inevitably does. You know, if I got picked to go on this project, I would be part of establishing a new government. And so just, I guess, having it sink in that there are so many things that just won't apply to me anymore, I think it would probably be bittersweet. Because there are a lot of things that I'd miss, but there are a lot of things that I really won't miss at all.
You know, everybody gets to choose how to spend their lives, or at least everybody should be so lucky to choose how to spend their lives. Most people, look, most of us are on plan B. You know, we start out with plans, we do something, but life gets in the way, and things happen, and we cope with that. And that's how we wind up on whatever path we wind up on in life. So to be able to actually make a choice about your path in life, that's a wonderful thing. We should all be able to do that. I'm, you know, hoping that she really can make that choice. If it actually came to that and she said, you know, I actually have this opportunity and it's me or it's somebody else, but you know, I've been offered, go for it. Go for it. She would be achieving something that I only dreamed of.
Whatever one may think about the Mars One plan, it can't be denied that it has inspired many people around the world. The sheer number of applicants is phenomenal.
We received more than 78,000 applications. So that's really amazing.
Heute ist alles leicht zu sagen. Wie es dann ist, 2 Stunden vor Abflug, ist was ganz anderes. Wenn man dann vor der Rakete steht und sich verabschiedet, ja, dann wird das völlig anders sein als jetzt aus der jetzigen Perspektive, ganz klar. Kann man
Ist das ein schwerer Gedanke?
Im Moment nicht. Ich habe 10 Jahre Distanz dazwischen, sichere Distanz, safe distance.
Ja,
ja.
aber
Dann, je näher es kommt, kann es sein, dass es ein schwerer Gedanke wird, ganz klar. Heute schütze ich mich noch mit der Distanz, mit der zeitlichen, ganz klar.
Given the choice, I would die on Mars because I would have had one of the most incredible experiences of any scientist. It's just unbelievable, the thought that you could go and work on Mars, and if you didn't come back, well, that's the way it is. That's life.
Der größte Nachteil, so spontan fällt mir ein, ist einfach, dass man die Natur nicht mehr so erleben kann, wie man sie im Moment erleben kann auf der Erde. Die frische Luft, die wegfällt, Schnee, Pflanzen, wobei wir werden Pflanzen haben im Gewächshaus, aber man hat halt diese Gerüche nicht mehr, die man auf der Erde hat. Diese Dinge werden wegfallen. Da muss man sich natürlich dran gewöhnen. Man kann die Sonne nicht mehr direkt auf der Haut spüren. Es ist immer irgendwas dazwischen. Glas, Isolierung, wie auch immer, Raumanzug. Kein Meeresrauschen mehr. Man kann nicht mehr mit den Füßen barfuß ins Meer gehen. Das wird wegfallen. Ich denke, das sind die Dinge, die man am meisten vermissen wird. Diese Naturverbundenheit, die man auf der Erde hatte. Weil dann ist man wirklich nur noch in einer künstlichen Umgebung. Das ist, denke ich, der größte Nachteil. Man muss in der Lage sein, sich auf die Dinge zu konzentrieren, die man dazu bekommt, nicht die man verliert. Den neuen Eindrücken, die man gewinnt, die neuen Erkenntnisse, die Emotionen, die Farben, die wissenschaftlichen Fortschritte, die man mit der ganzen Mission kreieren wird. Die Spuren, die man hinterlässt im Leben. Ich denke, das ist auch ein ganz wichtiger Punkt. Das ist was wir noch nicht besprochen haben, aber was für mich sehr wichtig ist. Ich möchte, wenn ich nicht von diesem Planeten gehe, sondern jetzt muss ich ja umdenken, wenn ich dieses Leben beende irgendwann oder wenn dieses Leben beendet wird irgendwann, möchte ich Spuren hinterlassen haben. Das ist für mich auch ein sehr wichtiger Punkt. Das haben wir noch nicht besprochen. Das ist was, wo ich sage, das treibt mich auch an. Und mit so einer Mission hinterlässt man Spuren. Auch für die Kinder und für die Nachkommen, Enkelkinder, wie auch immer. Dass man nicht einfach verblasst im Laufe der Jahrzehnte, sondern dass irgendwie jemand sagt, Mensch, das war doch der als einer der ersten mit auf den Mars geflogen ist. Spuren zu hinterlassen.